Hey everyone, thanks to all who have tuned in today, podcasting from Ontario, California. Welcome to Fractured Poet, a podcast for all of you poetically insane individuals who love getting lost in the art of poetry. I am your host, Katrina, just another person in the world obsessed with words, striving to make sense of it all. The theme of today's poems focuses on insecurities and self-doubt. Both of these poems were written during different times and not necessarily related to the other. Each poem describes a time in my life where I was most vulnerable. While one poem describes my insecurities, the other points out whether or not I feel worthy. In other words, self-doubting my entire being. Here is Fractured Goddess. Fractured Goddess, a woman who is uncertain of her future. Her thoughts are overbearing, forcing her to retreat and hibernate from her fears. A name often describing her mood, her moments of weakness, her times of feeling defeated, convincing herself to be strong, no matter the cost. Unaware of the outcome. Fractured Goddess, just a screen name chosen years ago. This poem is a unique one. As you can tell from the title Fractured Goddess, it resembles the name of my podcast, Fractured Poet, which is not a coincidence. Fractured Goddess was actually a screen name I created back in the AOL Instant Messenger days. I wanted something that was different and not something you'd see someone else using. When I came up with this name, it just stuck. It somehow molded itself to me later on. I mean, of course, I'm no goddess, but a goddess is a woman, to which I am. And fractured, well, as some of you can tell from my poetry, I've read over the last few sessions, I am somewhat fractured. But then again, who isn't, right? Anyways, I never really intended to write a poem about it. It just happened. Although the emotions in the poem are definitely real and accurate. And speaking of Fractured Goddess, for those of you that follow the whole Instagram thing, I do have two profiles on Instagram to which I do mention one every time I end the show. One is my personal page, which goes in all sorts of directions in terms of what I post, and the other is how I came up with the name of this podcast, Fractured Poet. That page is obviously dedicated to my poetry and all the poems I have written. So feel free to look me up and follow me if you like. You can follow one of them or both of them. The next poem I will read to you, for those who are listening, is called How Do I Deal? Wandering eyes, his attention is elsewhere. Confused and invisible. What is the point of this? Looking back, he catches another glimpse. Am I not enough? Perfect bodies, perfect faces. I begin to doubt my appearance. Switching positions, he stares at me and smiles. Am I his second choice? Disrespectful, uncomfortable. Is this wrong to feel? How do I deal when I'm not so sure? Call him out or leave him be? A question to be determined. A night filled with tears, doubting all that I feel. How do I deal? This poem was one of the two poems that were picked to be in Verses and Curses, the book that was created and published by a poetry professor I had a few years back. I am sure a lot of people, man or woman, guy or girl, can relate to this poem. The moment when you feel like you aren't good looking enough, that time when you notice someone do a double take right in front of you and your heart just drops. I'll tell you, it is definitely not a good feeling when you witness something like that firsthand. Nothing sounds more enticing than wanting to crawl under a rock and hide out. I wrote this poem thinking about the moment I experienced something like that, remembering what it felt like and how it made me feel so unattractive, like I wasn't enough. I have to be honest, it sucks writing poems that are filled with this much emotion. I scare myself with some of the things I come up with. Poetry is my outlet, my way out. I like to write about moments I have experienced. I also like to write about things I haven't experienced, if that makes any sense. I can be watching a movie or listening to a song and create my own story out of whatever I'm watching or listening to. The emotions form on their own, whether I have experienced them or not. It's kind of weird, but that's how I roll, I guess. I'm what I refer to as poetically insane. Well, folks, I guess that's all the time we have today. To those of you who have tuned in, thank you so incredibly much for listening to this podcast. You can catch this episode and future ones at anchor.fm/fractured poet. This episode of Fractured Poet was written and produced by me, Katrina Wisniewski. Music by both Alternative Rock Volume 1 and Rock Electronica Volume 4 from freeplaymusic.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Fractured Poet. And as always, thanks for listening, and until next time.